Welcome back, everyone. We're going to bring you our next speaker in the area of freedom and justice and finance and economics. This gentleman goes in the battlefield of finances experience. He was a commodity trading advisor. You know, the people that deal with cattle futures and pork bellies and orange juice and soybeans and stuff like that. So for him, big numbers are not a problem. He's dealt with them before. Well, he's going to share with you now what it seems amazing, but true, that there is trillions of dollars of our money, taxpayer money, American people, that is hidden at all levels of government in America that we need to know about, that we were not told about by public servants. He knows where they are, so that, folks, we got to go do something about it, because American people are overtaxed. We are overstressed out. People cannot make out their bills. People are in credit card debt, cannot afford to pay their home mortgages. Why? A big part of it is because we're paying taxes we don't need to pay. Legality one side, there's not even need, because there's so much of our money already in the hand of the government at all levels, local, state, and federal. So help me give a warm hand of welcome to your next speaker, Mr. Walter Burien.
Thank you, Payman. Just one question first. How many people have heard of my work before? Got a good percentage. And the people that weren't raising their hands, how many people have heard government was keeping 2 sets of books and holding back? The ones that didn't raise their hands, how many people heard that government's keeping 2 sets of books and promoting selectively created budget reports? Okay. Now, to start off my presentation here, there was a documentary I produced, finished it up last month. And I put together a short trailer. It's about 10 minutes long, uploaded it to YouTube about 5 days ago. It now has 6,000 views. If you do a search for government on YouTube, it'll come up in the first or second page. If you search for government wealth, it'll come up right at the top of the first page. Government investments, it'll pop up. Even if you search on my name, Walter, first name on YouTube, it'll pop up on the first page. So it's getting a lot of viewership. The 10-minute trailer actually teaches a lot right in the 10-minute trailer. So I'd like to start off by showing that 10-minute trailer, and then I'll take over from there.
Capable of being cut at any moment by accident or miscalculation or by madness. The weapons of war must be abolished before they abolish us.
Major combat operations in Iraq have ended. In the Battle of Iraq, the United States and their allies have prevailed.
With unlimited wealth also comes the potential for unlimited theft and extortion, easy money. Here we have some of the sharpest minds on the face of the planet orchestrating the takeover of the world economy. The corporations, the land, the productivity value of the people. We're going to be talking about the investment wealth that's built up within government, where government now owns it all by investment. The banks, the brokerage houses, the insurance companies, the Fortune 500 companies. Government is now bringing in more gross income than the population of the United States. When you look at the banks or the insurance companies, Their number one investor, collective government. When you look at the total picture, government in 2007 brought in $14 trillion. The entire population of this country grossed, net after taxation, gross income of $5 trillion. The dollar is actually a zero-based currency. What that means is for every $1 that goes out into the population, it comes back in by taxation back into government. So 100% of dollars that go out is funneled back in through government, through taxation, little bit by little bit, one piece at a time. The population is being drained, their productivity drained by taxation. When you have property tax in a venue, you don't own your house. You're renting. Try not paying your rent on your property tax. You have a $5 million home, they'll come in and take it. In fact, they've set it up now where the mortgage companies and the banks are the tax collector. Your tax bill is included in with your mortgage. If you don't pay, they come in and foreclose on your house. No delay. This is extortion. And this documentary will be designed to show that based on what has developed in government, the total investment wealth amassed by government, there is no need whatsoever for taxation. None. Zero. We can phase out all taxation and make it disappear. One venue at a time. Any city, county, state, school district can be restructured under the same principle of operation to pay their ongoing budgetary obligations through what I call a TRF fund, tax retirement fund. Same as a pension fund, but instead of paying a salary and benefits at retirement, it pays the ongoing budgetary obligations, so taxation is not needed. If you looked at the collective growth of government pension funds, local and federal combined from all, you're standing at about liquid assets of about $24 to $26 trillion in collective totals. On a TRF fund, it'll be designated that 60% of the investments take place in that local venue. Thus, an unlimited capital reinvestment in that local venue, zero unemployment rate, thriving businesses, no taxation. We now have more money for the public to spend, thus higher rates of return on the investments, thus providing more than ample revenue coming in for government to operate their normal budgetary basis. With TRF funds funding government, there is no real intent to grow, to overexpand in government. In fact, quite to the contrary, government now has the incentive to maintain within limitations, to downsize where appropriate, because the rates of return that are coming in are based on the prosperity of the population. The better the population is doing, the better the rates of return, more money coming in for government. Less money spent by government, the more there is for their own salaries, bonuses, and so forth. Gives them a very good incentive to downsize and not expand. So here you have the public and the financial cartels for the first time working together with the same common goal. The honest and ethical within government who know taxation is wrong and they've seen the unrestrained growth in government, the arrogance that is there within government, they're going to want to see the TRF funds also come into play. People kept asking me, well, who's taking the money? What account's it in? I said, it's the principle of operation. There's not one account. It's not who's directly stealing the money. It's where is that money invested? Any company can be made, a corporation, real estate project, period. That's where the power base. That's why you have the cooperation. That's why you have the silence. Syndicated media, 100% symbiotic partnership with government. Controlled education, 100% symbiotic relationship with government. Never peep, never mention, never word. Total void maintained in the population's comprehension. Would you give your 15-year-old child carte blanche to write their own allowance check each week? No way. Anyone I've asked that question, I would never do that. And that's exactly what we've done with our own government. We've given them carte blanche to write their own allowance check. Whatever tax they can create, investment income from specialty investment funds, which the public doesn't even know exists, they would create this phenomenal income coming in from themselves by having carte blanche to do so. And they had to keep the public totally off in right field as they continue business in left field. If you poll the public, they think they're elected officials or the managers within government. Oh, they're stupid. They don't know what they're doing. They're real idiots. Wrong. The idiot would be someone who would say this. Here you have collective governments that are controlling trillions of dollars, taking half the productivity value of the entire population, and someone's going to call them stupid? I would call them extremely opportunistic. And we've allowed them to get away with it for the last 65 years. It's time we took back our country and created a structure that directly benefited we the people. The annual financial report, or comprehensive annual financial report for government, is their holy grail of accounting. Never talked about, never mentioned, never discussed, because it showed the gross income, the investment wealth that was building, and showed the one-third, as of 2000, one-third tax income that came in. Now, if you looked at a budget report, it looked like 100% was coming in from tax income, because that's what's shown on the budget report. Everything else was shown on the annual financial report. And this was intentional on government's part, because they knew if that void was filled and the comprehension was being gained by the public as to the growth and scope and size of government, the population would have stopped it decades ago. So, never a mention, never a peep, never a word. When you have a government that develops into this type of extortion of revenue, manipulation of revenue, non-disclosure, I have to qualify that as organized crime. Government is breaking the law through their massive non-disclosure by intentionally creating a vacuum and a void on their collective ownership. If a public corporation did that, all the directors would be sitting in San Quentin after a 40-count SEC indictment. Here, city level, county level, state level, total vacuum, total silence, not a mention, not a peep, not a word. No comprehension, even discussed. Total refusal of our elected officials to even mention collective totals, total wealth, total investments. 65 years. It's easy to grease the skids and transfer the wealth and cut a deal here, cut a deal there, if no one even knows the money is there in the first place. That's why government, not a peep, not a mention, not a sound. Silence is golden, was government's rule over the last 65, 70 years. Talk about Janet Jackson or this, that, or the other thing over here and something non-consequential. And over here, let's see, in the 2008, government takes over $600 trillion in derivatives. They control the marketplace, cause the collapse, suck $15, $20 trillion out of the world economy into their investment fund accounts. On the other side of the trade, not a peep, not a mention. Silence is golden, as the public is masterfully entertained. Not to look, not even to comprehend, to think about it. That makes it very easy for the corruption. With the TRF fund application, we can revert the ownership back into the hands of the population, benefit the financial cartels, benefit government, benefit ourselves, creating a productivity through capital reinvestment of unequal proportions that will drive the economy for the next 1,000 years. And we will maintain our wealth and allow our wealth to build. I do recommend you suggest to your friends and family to do a search on YouTube. It's called The Only Game in Town, The Way Our Government Can Be. That is the trailer of the documentary. Now, I put out a documentary in 2000 called The Biggest Game in Town, which had to do with disclosure of what government was doing and how they were setting up their structure. That circulated worldwide. I released it on Google on December 25th of 2008. Within 4 or 5 days, it had 870,000 views worldwide, which was not productive for the boys, and all of a sudden a few strings were pulled in Google and they stopped the hit counter from going. But I had locked in screenshots of their data pages before they did so. The bottom line within government is you have so much wealth. I mean, every one of us, since we're little kids, we start a lemonade stand, make $5.80 for the day. You count it 10 times. Get a little older, maybe start a paper route. Well, I made $85 this week. If I get another 40 papers, I get $115. Go to college. We start investing in the market. We're sitting there on our laptop studying. Oh, I'm up $200. Well, I'm down 50. You know, we get older. Invest in real estate. Maybe start a business here, a business there. from when we're little kids up until when we die, we keep a running total of how much cash we have in our pocket, what the value of our investments are, and we keep a running total of our net worth in the back of our mind from when we're little kids up until when we die. Unless Alzheimer's sets in, then we forget. Now, I've spoken to thousands and thousands of people. I started National Disclosure in June of '98. Somebody will call me up. Our school district did this, and they have this bond issuance, and they want to raise our funds $15 million. Our state says they're short $1 billion, and they want to raise our taxes. Every single call I get, I ask the person, I said, do you know how much cash you have in your wallet? Yeah. Do you know what the value of your investments are? Yeah, approximately. Do you know what your net worth is approximately? Yeah. Why? I said, well, you just called me about your school district. What's your school district's checking account balance? I don't know. Take a guess. I can't. What about their investments? What's the total of their investments? I don't know. Guess. I can't. Why not? I don't know. Do you know approximately what their net worth is? No. Just take a guess. I can't. I don't know. Every single person in 12 years, thousands of calls, not one person had the foggiest clue of the basics that are fundamental to each and every one of us personally since we're little kids up until when we die. And I find it absolutely amazing that government created an entire void and vacuum of comprehension to what's basic to each and every one of us in our own personal lives. It didn't happen by accident. It was intentional due to the money and control involved. What I've realized recently is that we're trained from when we're little kids to do the right thing. But we're also trained to be easy marks. We have all of our philosophies, all of our good intentions. 95% of the people are well-intentioned. All of a sudden, as we get into our middle ages, we get taken here, we get taken there. Someone burns us here, someone steals from us here. Someone, it happens. Unless we're in a vacuum someplace and no one can touch us, it happens. And we go to the court system, we report it to law enforcement, nothing happens. You fight it, there's something wrong here. And by the time you figure it out that the game is rigged to liquidate you of your wealth, you're old and ready to die. So people have to understand to look at the basics and realize that we've all been trained to be easy marks. We've all been trained, to allow the thief to steal from us. Well, we have the largest prison population in the world right now, I saw a release from state figures, state by state. Georgia won out. 1 out of 13 people in the state were either in prison or on parole. When I saw that figure, I said, I wonder what it is in China. 3 out of 100,000. Don't you remember, we have the freest country in the world. Best money prisons can buy and law enforcement. And when it comes down to crime, breakup of the family, or drug addiction, which we have the highest levels of in the world, no one even comes close to us in breakup of the family, drug addiction, and crime. You have to ask yourself one basic question, very important. How much money is that generating for my city, my county, and my state? It's billions of dollars a year in each state. It's $1 trillion a year marketplace. We're all masterfully entertained as a structure has evolved out of opportunity to steal from us and keep us as easy marks, as we're constantly being given one reason, that reason, this reason. Oh, we have to raise your taxes. Oh, there's crime on the street. There's drug addiction. We have to take care of health care. Now, health care has been in the news recently. The big debate over health care, national health care. I saw the syndicated media be almost honest. They said, well, this bill they're passing, the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies are going to be the big winners. Pharmaceutical company profits are going to soar, and the insurance companies, their profits will soar because they'll have less liability. Well, that's where they stopped. What they forgot to mention was collective government owns the pharmaceutical companies. Collective government is the #1 investor with the insurance companies, probably equaling about 80% of the equity they have under management within the insurance companies. So when government funnels hundreds of billions of dollars out in pharmaceuticals to the old folks, to the young kids, to everyone in between at exorbitant prices, they're guaranteeing themselves their own profit on the companies they already own through collective ownership. It's a rigged game in that fashion. Never a peep, never mention, never a word. There is one illusion that is built up in the public's comprehension. You always hear, all these corporations, those lobbyists, they're trying to influence government, and they get everything done. Wrong. They got it backwards. That's intentionally promoted to you. Government, through collective ownership, took over the corporations over the last 60 years, and here we are saying, oh, those companies are really screwing us, and government, protect us. How can you let them get away with that? Government is the owner. Russia looked at what was happening in the United States, had happened in the United States, and they saw how much control collective government had over the population. They saw how much money was being brought in, and they said, whoa, wait a second here. They wrote a better blueprint for communism and total control. We got to follow their principle. Now, we had the money and the wealth building. This is the wealthiest country in the world, but when you have massive wealth, there's 100% potential for massive theft. And when the public's being entertained off in La La Land over here, and everyone's cutting their deals behind closed doors over here from within government, public never stood a chance in hell of not getting burnt out of opportunity. The corporate board meetings, large corporations. You know, people were saying, oh, those corporations are outsourcing, sending jobs to Mexico, China, Russia. Wrong. Most of them would have stayed here in this country. Who was promoting to the board of directors to outsource were the shareholders. Who were the shareholders? Collectively, government. You break down any Fortune 500 company and look at the tens of thousands of local governments, they may own between 68% to as high as, I've seen as high as 91% of a company. They've taken over in collective ownership. You will not find any one city, county, or state owning more than 5%. There are limitations on any local government on how much they can buy of one corporation. But if you have, say, New York State, City of Manhattan buys 5%, City of Brooklyn buys 5%, State of New York buys 5%, the State Retirement Fund of New York buys 5%. Well, those 5% add up. You know, there's only so many nickels in a dollar. And they can actually target any corporation or industry group and effectively take it over. Now, they can't network between themselves. Well, we're going to use our influence. We own 71% of that corporation. We're going to tell them what to do. That's a monopoly. And being government, there's still certain restrictions in play. So the way they got around that was through the creation of private financial associations. You may now have 12,000 local governments as members. And they can sign their proxy voting rights for the shares they own over to the private association. So that private association now can walk into, say, a board meeting at ExxonMobil, representing 12,000 local governments, which just happen to own 61% of the corporation. Effectively, that person could fire the entire board of directors by proxy. Okay, it's a phenomenal control. He can direct where they're going to spend their multi-billion-dollar advertising budgets with ABC, CBS, NBC, wherever. Okay, so they've created control over the majority of the large corporations through investment. Now, The way they pulled this off was rather brilliant. This plan went into motion back in the 40s, after World War I. Wars allow for massive theft. You can clean out entire countries' treasuries and shift it over to yourself. Well, World War II, there was massive theft that took place. Hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars were liberated and taken. And they said, okay, well, we just pulled off a nice little theft and confiscation. Let's now set the principles in motion for peacetime, but to give us the position to control and build our wealth. It's always been about wealth transfer, transferring someone else's wealth into your pocket. Okay? Government gave the ability as an organized structure to be an administrative clearinghouse for revenue collection. Now, most government employees that I've spoken to, they don't have a clue. They're just like us. They're doing their job. Well, I got a nice pension, getting a good pay, and got to do my job, and so forth. 95% of the government employees don't have a clue what's taking place. The upper level management, they know. You know, they're seeing bits and pieces of the forest. The lower level government employee, he's surrounded by leaves. He doesn't even see a tree, you know, through the leaves. So there's very few people that have a perspective on the whole picture. But when you look at the fundamental basics, all of a sudden the picture becomes crystal clear. But the Federal Reserve was a brilliant move on the part of the boys to take it all over. A gold and silverback currency, which up until '63, they phased out gold and silver. There was not enough gold and silver to back the intrinsic value of the United States. And in fact, probably at that time they had less than 5% of the gold and silver necessary to back up what was in circulation. And, you know, the value, the intrinsic value. So they switched over to the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve, by the way, is a private association, kind of like the Boy Scouts, you know, Knights of Columbus, you know, a very close government authority working with it. And they have membership banks participating with the Federal Reserve. And by being a member bank, they get certain privileges and benefits and so forth, as long as they intercooperate within guidelines. I've heard people say, well, it's in the Federal Reserve. You know, well, it's like saying, let's cancel the Boy Scouts. Yeah, you do. You still have a lot of Boy Scouts. You know, they're just no longer members of the association. So all the banks can go off separately doing what they want to do by themselves. Because the association is strictly a private association. The banks are just members, you know, following certain guidelines. But by creating the Federal Reserve, they were now able to expand the money supply each and every year, dealing with the value. You know, a dollar is a bartering tool. It's a piece of paper with ink and print on it, okay? But as an accepted bartering tool is where it has value. Polynesian countries, way back when, they used to use seashells as bartering tools, okay? They've used gold and silver and, you know, what are cattle, wheat, corn, soybeans, you know, bartering tools. The dollar is a good bartering tool. Fits in an ATM, the seashells didn't, so they used the dollar. But as they expanded the growth of the dollar and the money was recycled back in through government, government would collect a massive amount of money, put it out in services to the public, but each year they were pulling off 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%, really good year, maybe 8%, and investing it. Well, each year, another 2, 3, 4, 5% invested. Next year, 2, 3, 4, 5% invested. Well, that adds up each year. And over 65 years, government took it all over by investment. The Fortune 500 companies, the banks as being the #1 investor, the insurance companies. Now, in the news a while back, Hershey, the chocolate company, they were going to move their plant down to Mexico. Now, the corporation and the directors, no way. You know, they loved being in Hershey, Pennsylvania. They were a landmark. You know, it was the spirit of Hershey, Pennsylvania. They didn't want to move. The stockholders, government, wanted them to outsource to Mexico because they'd get 6, 7, 800% higher profits. Who were the collective government bartering to get them to move? Local and federal government management being networked through the private associations. What do they do to sweeten the deal? They also gave Hershey a $700 million bond, issuance under Hershey to give them the money to build their plants down in Mexico to guarantee this new 6, 7, 800% profit. Now, on my website, which is CAFR1.com, stands for Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, CAFR1.com. On the front page, you'll see a big red button. It says CAFR Downloads. I put a few example CAFRs up there for states and cities and counties. But you'll also see the audit of the Federal Reserve, which is their annual financial report. I have 2009, 8, and 7 up there. You'll see the audit of the IRS up there. Okay? Very good thing to look at. One report which caught my eye, and I made sure I put it up, I usually don't get floored. But at the end of 2008, I trade the futures market, commodities, gold, silver, cattle, wheat, corn, currencies. Done that for 32 years. I was a CTA, commodity trading advisor, for 14 years. Used to be a tenant up at the World Trade Center. Did an international news line via satellite, primarily on silver and U.S. Treasury bonds. And as I learned this about government, one revelation after another. Well, for the last couple of years, I thought I caught it all. End of 2008, came across a report. Comptroller of Currencies puts out an audit of the banks, their top derivative holdings. Looked at it. On the first page, second paragraph, it states that 5 commercial banks were responsible for 97% of all derivative trades from all banks. 5 commercial banks. I said, okay, that makes sense. Then I went 2/3 down through the report to the tables section. You'll notice in a government report they'll have pages and pages of script talking about what they want everyone to see, and they always put the good stuff at the end. They figure everybody's going to fade out before they get 2/3 through the report and never even see it. Always go about 2/3 of the way down in any government report and start looking from there, and then go back to the beginning. But the table section, they have about 18 tables in the report. Table 1 were the top 30 banks. And I looked at it, and the report was in millions, so that meant add 6 zeros to the numbers. Well, J.P. Morgan Chase was king. It showed their net worth at $1.4 trillion. Are you ready for what their derivative holding was? Somebody take a guess. $90 trillion. That blew me away, okay? And that was just J.P. Morgan Chase. Now, keep in mind, that's not J.P. Morgan Chase's money. That's their clients' money. Who were their primary clients that were trading these derivatives for? Local and federal government investment management funds, which they were acting as the clearing agent for, okay? And just to qualify what 90 trillion is, in 2000, Alan Greenspan, as quoted from the Wall Street Journal, he said he was concerned about the $80 trillion a year international derivative market. So at the end of 2000, internationally, we had $80 trillion. Here, come 2008, here's J.P. Morgan Chase holding $90 trillion, 10 trillion more than the entire world derivative market in 2000. Now, the derivative market, which is my specialty, I've traded for 32 years. In 2000, when Greenspan mentioned, this $80 trillion a year market, well, one thing he didn't mention was government was probably writing 65% of the paper in that market. A derivative transaction, a lot of people have a hard time. Well, what's a derivative transaction? I can't understand it. It's actually very simple. Okay? See that cooler up there, the little green cooler? If I wanted to buy it 6 months from now and I said, okay, I'll pay you $2, but say the value of it's like, say, $15. I'll pay you $2 now, and 6 months from now, I'll give you the other 13, and I own it. And she signs a contract for me. I give her $2. She goes, that's a good deal, But I know water bottles are going to go right through the roof, and that'll be worth $30 in 6 months. So I give her $2 now. 6 months from now, I buy it for $15. Doesn't matter if they're going for $30. I've locked her into a contract. Now, and that water bottle, say for example, she hears, I want to buy it for 15. She goes, well, I know water bottles are going to go down to 50 cents. China's coming in and selling them for a quarter 6 months from now. Okay, I sign a contract, you know, $2 changes hands. I'm kind of forced to buy it at 15. If the price starts going down to $1, I just got stuck for $14. So a derivative contract is time. You're buying 5 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, whether it be gold, silver, cattle, wheat, corn, soybeans. You're making a commitment on time, okay? And you're locking in the financial responsibility. If you're a seller and the price goes down first, you buy it back, you collect the equity difference. If you think the price is going up, you buy it first, price goes up, you sell it, closing out the trade, and you walk with the equity difference. So a derivative contract, when you execute it, you're looking for the price to go up or down. You can sell first, buy first. Doesn't matter, you know, when you do a gold futures contract, doesn't matter if you have 1 ounce of gold. You could be sitting there selling 1,000 contracts, okay? And by the way, on that derivative report for JP Morgan Chase, I looked, I think it was table 13 or 14, it showed their gold futures position. They were holding $87 billion worth of gold derivative contracts, mostly short. They sold first. It was right before the collapse. And what happened at the end of 2008, now between after 9/11, when you know the World Trade Centers got hit, which I was extremely mad about. I wanted to bring my son there for lunch when he got older, but never had the chance to. But before this, 8, 9, 10 months before it, I watched in the Wall Street Journal, they show institutional fund short derivative positions against physical holdings. The normal ratio is 18%, high side was 30, 35%. Well, 8 months before it had broken 40%. I said, something's up. 3 months before 9/11, it hit 60%, hedged short. Okay? Well, when 9/11 occurred, stock markets worldwide collapsed for 2 or 3 days. And for 2 or 3 days, the markets collapsed, 4 days, 5 days. And people said, well, who profited from this? And all of a sudden it pops out in the paper. Someone didn't claim a $5 million put option on American Airlines. This must be the people behind 9/11. $5 million is chump change on chump change on chump change. Okay? The bond market, which I was actually trading at the time, 4:30 in the morning Arizona time, all of a sudden I watch it, boom, up a point. It moves in little ticks. A full point is 30 seconds of a point. Up a point and a half, down a point and a half in seconds. And I said, what the hell? I looked at the front page of AOL, see Tower 1 burning. Okay? Well, the number one profiteer off of 9/11 were the government institutional managed funds that had their short derivative positions on. They took a loss on their physical positions, but their short derivative positions made a killing, trillions of dollars in a very short period of time. Now, government also outsourced a lot of their management funds. CalPERS International in '82 was one of the largest. And by the way, CalPERS was getting closer to $1-2 trillion dollars back in the 80s, okay, California. And it was getting too obvious, that much money under management, we got a problem here. CalPERS started recommending to local governments that they manage their own funds, go to separate management, get out of CalPERS. Or they started CalPERS International in '82, and then they recommended to actually all local government pension fund managers across the country, you and local governments have very odd and peculiar rules. You're not allowed to trade derivatives, futures, calls, puts, stock options, advanced forward currency contracts. This can cost you billions of dollars. CalPERS, which has an excellent management record for 65 years, has just gone to CalPERS International, and in so many words, if you participate with them, you will not be subject to those pesky little rules. Okay, so they consolidated and directed management participation to go to CalPERS International. Now, CalPERS International is a transfer agent. It's set up as a transfer agent. If you get their comprehensive annual financial report, it always shows low balances, $39 billion, $51 billion, $49 billion. That's because they're showing what's in the process of going out for assignment or coming back for distribution. They've actually assigned Credit Suisse, Deutsche Bank, Millennium Fund 1, Millennium Fund 2, a few $1 trillion. Okay? Outside of the dollar, outside of mandatory investment in the United States, local government pension funds were restricted from only having a very small percentage outside the dollar, invested in Asian, European companies, and so forth. And they kept raising that up over the decades. The bottom line came down to easy money, profit motive, public sitting there off in la-la land, government bringing in hundreds of billions of dollars a day. Okay. I mentioned the gross income government. 2007 collective government, local and federal, tax income between both was about $5 trillion. Investment income, a little over 6-point-something trillion. Enterprise income, total liquid and the total gross income was about $14 trillion for government in 2007. Tax income, investment income. Investment income is actually first now. Tax income comes second, then enterprise income. 14 trillion. The entire population of the United States, Bill Gates, the guy working at McDonald's, investment income, salary income was about 10 trillion. And if you take off direct and indirect taxation, indirect is very important, big chunk there, that was about 5 trillion, as I mentioned. So that gave the public net income after taxation of $5 trillion. So here you have government grossing 14 trillion, the population bringing in 5 trillion net after taxation, or Russia's dream of the 40s. Or, hello, comrade. As the public was masterfully entertained. So we have communism with a fascist twist, implemented here. To pull off creating this type of structure, keep in mind, like I said, the basic fundamentals to each and every one of us personally, how much money we have in our pocket, our total investments, our net worth, which everyone is oblivious to, whether it has to do with their city, county, or state. And even if they decide, I'm going to go down and look at this, they're given a budget report, which shows where tax income is brought in and tax income is expended. They call that the general purpose operating funds. They could go over it 100 times, account for every nickel, dime, and penny. Now, if they looked at the annual financial report, big difference. You could have a state saying, we're $700 million short in our budget, we're going to have to raise taxes, fire the police, throw the school teachers out in the street, And you look at their you look at their budget report, they're $700 million short. Look at their annual financial report, they could be $3.5 billion in the black. And the public sitting there clueless, being marketed to, off in la-la land, and these guys are laughing, they were, off all the way down to the bank. Every week, every month, every year. And they've been building up for 65 years. And they're also getting more totalitarian, as long as you're nice little, sheeple and ferrets sitting there following instructions. Which way do I go? Which way do I go? That way? Okay, yeah, that way, okay. No problem. 40% of my money goes out to the government? Oh, that's great. No problem. If you object, whatever, they will target you. They'll make your life a living hell. They're organized crime. Al Capone, back in the 20s, 30s, he would go up to businesses saying, you're in my town, you pay me 25% of your gross income for the week if you want to do business in my town. And he would then, if somebody said, I'm not going to pay you 25%. No way. He goes, you're right. You're going to pay me 35%. And if you don't pay me in 10 days, I'm going to firebomb out your business. And he did. Government has everybody sitting here fearful, scared. Well, don't pay the taxes. IRS is going to come in. They're going to indict me. I'm going to be in jail back and forth. It's going to run all my money out the window anyway, and they'll destroy me. Well, maybe. The old expression, there's nothing to fear but fear itself, and they promote the fear aspect to keep 99% of the public in line. Okay? But, everyone hears the IRS. Everyone knows they're collecting taxes. How many people in this room know what IRS collected last year? Anyone know? Okay, on that red Staples button on my download, I have one of the, not last year, but I think it was for 99. It gives IRS's annual financial report, audited by GOA and the Treasury Department. Now, just a notation, I didn't really look into the IRS until about 2 years ago. I said, okay, well, let me find out about the IRS. I wanted to find out first, is it a government agency or is it a private agency? Private corporation. Well, everything I looked at told me 100% it's a private corporation. assigned as a collection agency, assigned by Congress to collect tax bills. The IRS was the only company I found anywhere in the world that puts out 2 annual financial reports. They put out one annual financial report for their collection obligation to the U.S. government, and they put out another annual financial report for their corporate structure, which told me they're 100% private. Now, I got my hands on the, annual financial report for the collection obligation for the Congress that they're contracting out for. I have not been able to find their second annual financial report. I looked through the archives of all the documents from Senate, Congress to the IRS. Every single document I found, without exception, said, oh, this is recommended, we suggest. There was not one document that said, you will do it this way. This is the way the law is, this is how it'll be done. Everything was a suggestion, a request, not one specific instruction. Over everything I could find, communication between Treasury and IRS, Senate, Congress, always a suggestion or a recommendation. Never once, this is how you will do it. Because they were not a government agency, they couldn't be told what to do. Only recommendations and suggestions. I haven't found their original annual financial report yet, but I have a feeling they're not a U.S. corporation. I think they're a foreign corporation, would be my guess. Okay. And their other annual financial report, which is for their debt obligation, excellent report. You can download it off my site under IRS. It shows the total demographics, total personal income, total corporate income. Phenomenal data there, showing the big picture. And the thing I noticed when I looked at the corporations, which have anywhere from 5, 7, 8% tax liabilities, 3%. Do you know what the big corporations are paying in tax back then? 0.2%, 0.25%. Because after their deductions, nothing. Now the private sector at that time, 35%, 27%, 16%. And it broke up each demographic group. Now I thought about it for a second. I said, why are the corporations getting off so scot-free? Well, duh. I've been telling people, government owns the corporations. Why would they tax themselves? Okay. The investment income, if a tax was levied on government's investment income, it would pay off almost all budgets on local government. Okay. But the bottom line is, we were trained and conditioned, a vacuum and a void was built up on the basics, so we wouldn't even think about it. Don't go there. There's no communication, no conversation, no cognitive thought allowed as to what are basics to ourselves. What's total cash gross receipts, total investments, net worth. Don't discuss it, don't talk about it. You can have a state saying they're short on their budget, $700 million, but if you look back 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, they may have increased their expenditures by $5.3 billion. That's why they're short $700 million. Do people look at the basics? No. They're being marketed to and entertained to follow instructions as an easy mark for wealth transfer at the benefit of others. Now, what I've told you up until this point, I just consider blind opportunity. We left the vault door open. They said, thank you very much. Are you ready for the scary point? At this point, 70% of the show are congressmen, our senators, our governors, attorneys. 70% of our elected officials are attorneys. Networking to move as much cash as possible now to their advantage, dotting the I's and crossing the T's to lock in the productivity value of the next 7 generations. As we sit here being masterfully entertained. It's a scary thought, and I think everyone here knows the reputation of an attorney. Say it's mandatory to use them, or you'll be destroyed. Then when you're forced to use them, they'll take everything you got, and after they, in plain language, screw you, they'll still expect you to say thank you and act all indignant if you get mad. Does that kind of seem like what politics are today? That's because 70% attorneys. They're networking between themselves. There is no more separation of powers doctrine. The judicial took over the administrative and legislative through the minions of attorneys. Now networking it all together as one corporate for-profit enterprise. And if you start digging into your local cities, your counties and states, you know, this is California. I consider California a beautiful state. I lived out here for about 6 years at one point down in the San Fernando Valley. Well, we have Governor Schwarzenegger. We're $38 billion short on our budget. How will we survive? $38 billion also is pocket change for California. If you took all local government within California, added up the collective liquid investment totals, you're somewhere around 10 or 11 trillion dollars. Okay? If Schwarzenegger said today, well, we found ourselves short with $38 billion in the red, we got to make this up. What we're going to do is do a full audit review of all specialty investment funds from all local governments, which there's tens of thousands, and we're going to determine what a equal percentage would be to satisfy our entire, negative and give us enough of a surplus to bite us through the hard times here. Well, it would probably only be like 1.5%, maybe even 2% max of an equal distribution from all of these funds. Simple, no problem, yep, done. Well, number one, they get a big problem because they can't qualify all of these specialty investment funds in the first place because the public never knew about them, the majority. Okay, so that's a big problem for them. They can't mention it. Silence, void of comprehension. Now, the TRF fund, tax retirement fund, what I've done there is now, after bringing forward comprehension and disclosure, I'm now showing that by investment revenue, just like a government pension fund, which there's a massive, it's the largest financial structure on the face of the planet. Collective government pension funds, you're talking about $26 trillion, local and federal. Now, you will not see consolidated totals anywhere. You may see large funds disclosed, CalPERS, New York State Retirement Fund, different state retirement funds, but there are hundreds, if not thousands, of other smaller and mid-sized pension funds for government that they're not talking about. You look at the collective totals, it's massive. And for the last 60 years, as government pension funds grew, they drove the economy. They were investing in corporations, real estate projects, shopping malls, apartment buildings. They drove the economy. Okay? TRF funds, tax retirement funds, here's the win-win situation. Why it will happen, will work, and I'll show you the 1 + 1 equation that equals 2 that will get a chill on your spine. The last couple hundred years, you had government and the financial cartels working together to do the wealth transfer from the population. Okay? And they built up a phenomenal corporate structure to do so. TRF funds, for the first time in history, teams up the population and the financial cartels to modify government's operations, administratively modify it. The entire structure is in place today to make it happen. Why is it not happening? They've been conditioned to their easy money, direct taxation. Hey, 15-year-old kid, 14-year-old kid with a carte blanche allowance check, who determined his own allowance check, do you think he's going to give that up? He'll run you into the ground. You give a 14-year-old carte blanche to cut his own check, you made $3,000, say, a month, he'll be cutting a check for $3,500 a month. Well, work harder. Get another job. Get your income up to $3,500. I cut an allowance check for $4,000 next week, You wouldn't be stopped. Government's not going to be stopped. It's easy money, especially when you have 70-80% attorneys running the entire show. They couldn't care less. There's a presentment of offering a service. I mean, the schools are, phenomenal in the schools and certain things, healthcare and so forth, but it's designed for profit, to funnel in tax revenue to guarantee a profit on investment holdings. And the public's not looking at that. So they're getting burnt. Taxpayers getting burnt beyond imagination. They have been for the last 30, 40 years. TRF funds, public now starts looking. You start creating the investment wealth from the TRF funds, meeting budgetary obligations. You can actually, most cases, for 3, 4, 5 years, phase out taxation in that venue. Because after audit review and consolidation of surplus revenues, you may be 45, 55, 60% there on the balance. Okay? Pension funds, people put in 1.5% employee, 1.5% local government to build up to their massive structures now. Tier F funds, you have the object of phasing out taxation. Let's move it along. Make an 8% contribution into that. Meet the objective in 3-4 years. No taxation, phase it out. Because you're meeting your budgetary obligations from the return on the funds. And they have a 65-year exemplary track record of showing what they did with their own funds. You have certain examples here and there where they try to promote, oh, we got burnt with everybody else. No. 9/11, government funds barely missed a heartbeat. Public got cremated. Okay, 2008, public got burnt to the nth degree. Government funds, they took a hit, but hardly missed a heartbeat in comparison. And the short derivative positions they took prior to 2008, they made a killing. I'm a derivatives trader. And what people don't realize, for every dollar lost in one account, a dollar is credited to another account. And here, $35, $40 trillion changed hands worldwide, created the depression we're in right now, okay, from sucking that money out of everyone else's pockets, through easy opportunity on the derivative play, as everybody got caught in the wrong positions, the minnows got eaten alive. But that money was transferred elsewhere. But they did it so fast, so hard at the end of 2008, they created a lot of defaults. You can only steal so much money from somebody. If somebody was caught in a derivative trade, they lost $140 million. They only had $100 million. They're in default for $40 million. So here's the definition of arrogance. They now take $1 trillion here and $1 trillion there of taxpayer revenue to shore up their own casino, which they just stole $35, $40 trillion from the world population. Now, if that's not the definition of arrogance, I don't know what is. And the public sits there, masterfully entertained. Well, did you hear O.J. was back on trial? And what's that golfer's name? He was cheating on his wife. When you talk about what's important, your life, your home, your community, your family, they have you off in la-la land, not even thinking about the basics of the money. Cash in hand, total investments, total net worth. Even if you try to dig into and ask, they're going to play the old silent routine on you. But your advantage, they had the comprehensive annual financial report. They had to keep their own records. You start crunching numbers, start looking, read. At first you'll go, whoa, what's this? Little bit by little bit, pick it up. Get a few friends together. And all of a sudden you're going to be saying, they did this, what? They did this, what? They paid that, what? You now have the edge. You're looking. Now, I've had a lot of people say, Walter, when did this all start? Federal Reserve, end of World War I, 1800s? I said, no, I went back a little further than that. Went back to the caveman days. There's this caveman had a beautiful cave on a cliff overlooking the beach. See the entire ocean. One day, this other caveman came running up. He lived back in the swamps, really bad part of town. I just found 500 herd beasts. I captured 20 of them. I'm going to have meat for the next 3 years. Do you want some? He goes, yeah, where are they? He goes, let me draw you a map. You go over this mountain here, down that canyon, make a right, go down to the end of the canyon, and they're right there. The guy grabs his rope, runs off with the map in hand, goes over the mountain, makes a left at that canyon, makes a right at that canyon, gets down to the end of the canyon. What he finds is 5 ravenous saber-toothed tigers who promptly eat him for lunch. The other caveman's there, standing up at his front door. Hey, now I got a place with a view. That's when it started. Okay? And the more you're masterfully entertained, the more easier of a mark you become. And when you have collective government, I'm giving my end time. When you have collective government masterfully entertaining the entire population, not to even think of the basics on the city level, county level, school district level, we got exactly what we got. But hopefully I've given you the comprehension to start reversing it. And this, I can't tell you, this is the most important. This is the whole spinal cord, the whole comprehension, cognitive thought that everything else comes from. And we all know how to be energetic now and healthy, so our minds are working properly, so everybody in this room is going to be dynamic players, I'm sure. And I thank you very much for listening to me.